Why not try something smart to chew on? The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It is Thursday, March the 28th, 2024, and this is program number 1154 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. In addition to 101.1 FM radio, you can get us at our website. It is rcistlucia.com, rcistlucia.com, and you can download our previous shows on that platform in podcast form. We are also streaming live on Facebook. Just search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And of course, be sure to like and share that, please, with your friends and family, wherever they may be. And if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so, as you should know by now, is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. WhatsApp number, if you want to message in, is 724-0008. So again, save that in your contacts, and it is 724-0008 if you want to call in or message in via WhatsApp. Now, some birthday greetings. Miss Nicole Alexander, happy birthday to you, Nicole, and wish you an absolutely fantastic birthday celebration, and of course, enjoy the entire long weekend. And some celebrities celebrating their birthdays today include Lady Gaga. She turns 38, as well as the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. He turns 79 today. A bit of history. Well, on this day in the year 1854, Britain and France declared war on Russia, expanding what is known as the Crimean War. In the year 1910, on this day, the first seaplane took off from water under its own power, and that was piloted by Henri Fabre, and that happened at the Étang de Berre Lagoon at Martigues in France. In the year 1930, on this day, the Turkish cities of Constantinople and Angora changed their names to Istanbul and Ankara. In the year 1939, on this day, the Spanish Civil War ended with the fall of Madrid to the nationalists headed by Francisco Franco. 1946, on this day, during the Cold War, the United States State Department released the Acheson-Lilienthal report outlining a plan for the international control of nuclear power. And in 1979, on this day, a partial meltdown at the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in the United States resulted in the release of radioactive gas and iodine into the atmosphere, but there were no recorded deaths. And we now move on to our dish of the day. The Daily Dish is brought with the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down to my nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Lance Road in Castries, Bossage Grosile, and Flax Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to the Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, today, around much of the world is considered Holy Thursday. And it is a part of that Christian liturgical calendar within which sort of begins that whole period of what is known as the Easter Triduum. And of course, it's a really important moment in the crescendo of Christians all around the world. Of course, today would effectively be a period for the remembrance, the memorial of the Last Supper, and of course that meal which was shared by Jesus and his disciples in Jerusalem before, in fact, he was taken prisoner. And of course, it has become a very important liturgical and sacramental moment, of course, for Christians all around the world. Yesterday, in the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, there would have been as well a service bringing all various presbyters, priests, and religious together in what is known as the Chrism Mass, a period for blessing of oils, which of course are to be used later on in the year. So of course, tomorrow will be a holiday here in St. Lucia, and Good Friday, of course, is a part of that very same period, which marks that remembrance of what is known as the Passion of Christ, the period of suffering and sacrifice and crucifixion, and then later on Easter Sunday, marking the day of resurrection. So, of course, a really important time for Christians all around the world as they continue to remember these certainly very critical periods in the life of Jesus Christ. Now, interesting enough as well, one of the things we wanted to talk about was the matter of what's in a name. I mentioned earlier on, today Lady Gaga is actually celebrating her birthday. Her real name, or well, I say real, her full name is in fact Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanotta. And of course, nobody really knows her by that. Millions and millions of people around the world would simply know her as Lady Gaga. And of course, it's quite common for artists to take on a stage name, some moniker of some form or fashion, and that is sometimes easier for identification. It might be something appealing about the name, of course. In her name, you see Lady, and so and then a Gaga, which is something you might associate with a sound maybe a baby might make, and probably it was in fact a name that came from her surname, which of course is a Italian name, very difficult to pronounce, and maybe it might sound like a Gaga for some people if they were to say so. So the whole concept of naming is certainly a really important one, and quite often names tell a whole story and sometimes give certain connotations or certain concepts, and that too is sometimes very deliberate in how they are chosen or selected. We were just speaking, of course, about Jesus, that name, coming from a certain, and of course these things get translated over periods, so you'd have moved from Yeshua, and those will tell you that the name Jesus and the name Joshua are one and the same. They come from the very same root, but we have them coming, of course, into English as being two separate names. The same can be said of the names Jacob and James. James is the one that is more considered the anglicized form of the name, but in fact it comes from, if you look back into the Latin, the Jacobi, and Jacobi comes from the same source where you get Jacob or Jacob. So it certainly is used sometimes to differentiate. We look for ways of differentiating what are sometimes the very same things. And it is important to recognize this because we have heard calls for potentially considering name changes. in terms of some of the places that we have, and that has become very topical. And I'm raising it, of course, because we noted in our history of today that the Turkish cities of what were known as Constantinople and Angora changed their names to Istanbul and Ankara, respectively. And you will find that in history over time. There is that deliberate rechristening, rechanging, or changing of names of places to, in fact, have a stronger identity or tie to something that may be a national ambition or a religious ambition or some sort of personal reason, and those become very important for the time. And of course, Constantinople came out of a period of Roman conquest and Roman control of that region along the Bosporus, where decision was taken to construct a new city, a new eastern head or capital for the Roman Empire, and it was named after Roman Emperor Constantine. And of course, the decision in the case of this Turkish state trying to create its own identity, changing its name to Istanbul, which would have been more of a Turkish name in origin. And so over periods of time, we know that naming conventions have changed tremendously. There was a time where perhaps if you were born on a certain day, you would be named on the basis of maybe the saint or whatever feast that was being celebrated on that particular day. And so that is how we, in fact, end up with naming conventions, with people being called Thomas and who may be called Therese and who might be called whatever the case may be. So these things come out because of whatever may be the practices of the day. And of course, we have been told that the original name of the island that we are currently inhabiting was Iwanalawa or Hiwanara, or translated to, for what we understand, to be the land of the iguana. Iguana, and Loa, Iwanalawa, as to how we get that original name of St. Lucia, which was provided by the first inhabitants of, well, at least the first known inhabitants that we are aware of at the time of colonization. That was the name that it was ascribed. And we have also come to know that even the whole idea of discovery of the island on a particular day, December the 13th, the Feast of St. Lucy, by Christopher Columbus is in fact not correct, and quite likely was maybe a name ascribed some time later on. But names are very important, and in very many instances, it's not just the issue of the name at the national level, but even names of places. And that can become very confusing as well, especially here in St. Lucia, where we consider to be Marisil, and where we consider to be Bois d'Orge, and where we consider to be Corinth. For many people, is very, very fluid, because we quite often have not really defined these spaces in any real way or sense. And so it becomes even worse when you get down to the street level, and when we realize that quite likely the vast majority of roads and thoroughfares in St. Lucia are unnamed. They are nameless, and so people are then left with sometimes very creative descriptions as to what would be called what. And of course, there have been attempts over the years, and to name different streets, and especially in newer subdivisions, newer housing areas. The tendency, of course, is to name them after some flower. And so by the example, you'll find that in St. Lucia there will be many hibiscus drives, and there'll be many flamboyant roads or drives, and or those types of things. Or sometimes they will also be named after maybe a bird, or Heron Way, or Kulibui Way, and you'll find some of these types of names being used over periods. So the issue of naming is certainly something that we do need to do better on, at least for the purpose of the matter of addressing and the matter of knowing, in fact, where we are. There have been a few attempts, perhaps by the postal services, in trying to improve on our addressing system, but we certainly do have a long way to go in terms of proper addressing on our island. And it is becoming even more important, especially if maybe we may be fine in figuring our way around the island because of our own personal knowledge and the fact that we live here. But given the fact that we are a touristic island, given the fact that we are welcoming hundreds of thousands of visitors on an annual basis, they quite often want to be able to get around as well. And herein lies the challenge that we find when you've got so many unnamed roads, and as a major problem. I mean, there was the call, of course, for better signage, and that is as well tied to this matter of naming, the need for proper signage. But at least if there were proper names in the first instance, persons who might be wanting to use Google Maps, and of course that is very common right now for people to navigate. They've got the benefit of their phones, and those devices are GPS enabled, and you can try to get around using that app. But the problem lies in the fact that many times we are moving along roads that are completely nameless, and so it becomes problematic for the app itself to be able to know where it is. And so in fact, I did try using, just out of curiosity really, to see how accurate the directions would be, using Google Maps to be able to navigate to my home. And I can tell you that I would certainly, if I had followed that app, I would certainly have been going down dead-end streets. I would have been taking wrong turns, and it would have perhaps not, maybe eventually it would have corrected itself, and I would have somehow managed to have gotten back to where I would like to end up. But unfortunately, the overall situation with the mapping of and the naming of places in our country certainly leaves a lot to be desired. It is something that I think we do need to spend some time and effort in addressing, and it is useful because it then allows for certainly a more ordered space, a more ordered country, which then leads to a lot more opportunities. Now, right now, for instance, we're seeing the increase, especially during that COVID period, and many businesses have taken on delivery services, and that, of course, requires directions, that requires addressing. Invariably, maybe somebody might decide, well, you know what, I'm going to send a pin via WhatsApp and to share my location. But that too it has some errors and can be problematic. So the need for addressing is something that helps us order our communities, order our society, and of course becomes very important from an economic perspective, because then it opens up opportunities for providing delivery services, and maybe even, although it's not even that common anymore, the whole concept of having mail being delivered to you is something that could potentially to be achieved. And I'm saying it's not so common. It still is pretty common, but not necessarily for getting letters, but certainly for packages that we are seeing people are, because they're consuming more online shopping. It therefore is very, very important from that perspective. So the whole issue of naming, the whole issue of what to call what, has clear economic implications. It is important in that regard. But of course, in terms of identity, and in terms of sense of place and heritage, it is certainly something that we do need to consider. Most of our towns and villages, as we well appreciate, were cast in the 18th century. And so in many instances, they represent 18th century French military governors or ministers at the time, or somebody significant at the time. And that is, in fact, the case when we look at Labrie, for instance, named after governor of the 1780s, who was very instrumental in establishing roads and what have you. Micoud, named after the Chevalier de Micoud, also governor during the 1760s and 1770s in St. Lucia. Castries, named after a French minister for the maritime colonies. Dennery, the Count of Dennery, named after that. Choiseul, a very similar situation. Some of them actually do survive as the very early names, which are ascribed to some sort of geographic feature within the space. So you have Gros-Îlet coming because of the Pigeon Island, the Big Island, and others like Soufrière because of the volcano there and that association, or maybe some other geographic feature like Vieux-Fort, and even sometimes things that may have been living in a place like Aslaoé. I'm not too sure that there were ever any pigs at Ascochon, but we also get those types of very interesting names too. So something to think about in terms of our communities and what's in a name. That's our dish of the day. When we come back, we're going to take in our weather report, and then we're going to head to the phone lines.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, 8+ tip. All kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also glass, gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Gros-Îlet, and Flag Street in Vieux-Fort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Island Style's annual Easter clearance sale is here, and boy, do we have some exciting deals for you. Massive savings on tires to be had with discounts of up to 30% off store-wide. Buy all we have in the low stock model and watch your discounts skyrocket with a huge 50% off. Plus, get chip edge tires for as low as $1. Yes, we're clearing out our old stock to bring in the new. And that's not all. The Easter Bunny has added extra savings on toilet tubs, bathroom vanities, tile tools, and so much more. It won't get any better than this. Jump on these excellent deals and visit our Island Style showroom in Castries, Rodney Bay, or Vieux-Fort, or call 450-452 or 453-TILE. That's 8453. Sale ends holiday Saturday. When you think tile, think Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's what, of course, the 1.1 is now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Bath. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. The winds will be coming from between the southwest and northwest near 12 miles per hour or 19 kilometers per hour, becoming lighter and variable or calm at times. The weather fair skies becoming cloudy at times with a chance of a few light to moderate showers. The forecast for Los Antilles, fair skies becoming cloudy at times with a few light to moderate showers. And the weather summary, light and variable winds are expected across the Eastern Caribbean region during the next couple of days. A low-level trough will continue to cause cloudiness with scattered showers over the Los Antilles during the next 24 hours. And this was the weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Island Style's annual Easter clearance sale is here, and boy, do we have some exciting deals for you. Massive savings on tires to be had with discounts of up to 30% off store-wide. Buy all we have in the low stock model and watch your discounts skyrocket with a huge 50% off. Plus, get chip edge tires for as low as $1. Yes, we're clearing out our old stock to bring in the new. And that's not all. The Easter Bunny has added extra savings on toilet tubs, bathroom vanities, tile tools, and so much more. It won't get any better than this. Jump on these excellent deals and visit our Island Style showroom in Cash Street, Rodney Bay, or Viewfort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. That's 8453. Sale ends holiday Saturday. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. You can also message in via WhatsApp, and that is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. Now, continuing in the House of Assembly today is the ongoing debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure. And I believe there should have been a presentation by the Member of Parliament for Micoud South and Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Alan Chasney. I think he was in the spotlight, in the sunlight, perhaps one can say as well, yesterday, and that caused a little interest there, with him getting into the back of his vehicle, I believe, because he said that he was providing some rides to some other colleagues. That's what we were told. But of course, always an opportunity to share a picture or a photo op or a video or whatever the case may be. And so it'll be very interesting, no doubt, to see how what the real message is coming out from the actual debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure. Hopefully we continue to do some further analysis of that sometime next week. Because, of course, there is quite a lot to unpack and to look at in terms of speaking about the economy, speaking about the finances of the state and the direction that we've got to head towards. Now, one of the matters, of course, that has been impacting small island developing states like St. Lucia, like many others, which are not necessarily even I think there are about, small states, like about 50 or so small states around the world. And one country that was considered a small state, although perhaps it still is a fairly large space, that of Guyana. And of course, by virtue of its population, however, with less than 1 million people, it still is considered a relatively small state, even though it has about 83,000 square miles of land mass. It certainly is pretty small from a demographic perspective, and has had the same challenges of small states, the ability to develop, to create. When you're small, you don't have a very large market to begin with. You're only sometimes producing for less than 1 million people, so your companies are not going to be as large. Your industrial base is perhaps not going to be as large. We've seen how population is, in fact, a really important, or has been in the past, a really important indicator for driving the creation of cities, the creation of civilization, the push towards agriculture. And many of these revolutions have been driven by having a quote-unquote surplus of people, which can then lend itself towards innovation, greater specialization, and development. And so population is very important in this regard. And of course, this is one of the points that had been made regarding the impact of the transatlantic slave trade, and in fact the slave trade in general across Africa, because it also was impacted by the trans-Saharan slave trade as well, and what that did for much of Africa, in particular West Africa, West and Central Africa, being significantly depopulated, and not having then the means to be able to develop to the extent that it perhaps should have in terms of economic development. And so population does matter quite a bit. And of course, within this context of small states, the dynamics are very peculiar as a result of that, because you have to then trade a lot more. You've got to be more interconnected with the rest of the world, and that comes sometimes with good and bad. Now, in the case of Guyana, it has long been seen as a country of a significant wealth, and that, of course, as I mentioned, very small population, very large hinterland, lots of resources, perhaps more resources that could even be properly extracted or utilized based on the size of their population. And of course, we speak of raw materials, potentially great forest resources, significant forestry, significant amount of land for agriculture, significant mineral resources, including things like bauxite for the production of aluminium, as well as gold and other minerals, and as well, most recently, that of hydrocarbons, that of petroleum, which of course we very much rely on for our transport and energy and economic systems all around the world. So that, of course, has become a major gain for Guyana, and a huge opportunity for the development of that country. And it then means that a lot of the things that they would have loved to be able to achieve are now potentially can happen. And of course, Guyana suffered, for example, not being able to have proper infrastructure to be able to support that very same industrialization that it probably would have wanted to see. Much of the bauxite would have had to have been, even after it was mined, would have then been shipped north to places in Canada, where it would have then been processed and turned into aluminium. And of course, the advantage that Canada had was that they were had the resources to be able to invest in hydropower, and that hydropower allowed for cheap energy, which could then be utilized in industrial processes. And so now Guyana, with this ability of having capital, can then potentially now begin looking at investing that capital into sustainable infrastructure, such as maybe hydropower, hydroelectric potential, which it has quite a lot of, and is generally seen as a renewable resource, although I know that there are some people who debate nowadays that hydro does have its environmental impacts, but it certainly is a lot cleaner an energy source than fossil fuels. And so that, of course, is something that can then lead downstream to be able to create lots of industry in Guyana. So it could certainly become a place for significant industrialization in the years to come. Of course, infrastructure like putting in not just energy, but as well transport systems, also very important for a country that finds itself on the mainland of South America with neighbors, including that of Brazil. Of course, Brazil seen as, well, it is the largest country in South America, and of course, a significant economic power, of a rising power, emerging state, part of the BRICS countries. And of course, trade with Brazil is something that Guyana would want to be able to continue to pursue. The state of Roraima, which is one of the most northern states, if not the most northern state in Brazil, in fact finds its closest route to the sea being through Guyana. And so then again, lots of potential then, and again in Roraima, large tracts of savanna and lots of potential for growth and development there. But of course, the transport links have been inadequate over the years. So lots of opportunities now for Guyana to be thinking about, potentially maybe rail to open up some of these trade opportunities, of course, with Suriname as well, and other neighbors. So it's a great opportunity and a great time to be Guyanese. Certainly a great time for Guyana, which is quite likely going to experience tremendous growth and development in the coming years. But of course, it is also coming under scrutiny, and questions are being asked. And part of that is perhaps coming from countries which perhaps one can say have enjoyed the benefits of a tremendous amount of exploitation over the years. And very interesting enough, there was an interview with the president of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali, who, of course, many have seen and that name has become a lot more internationalized as a result of the Guyana, Essequibo, Venezuela matter recently, where Guyana was in fact brought into the spotlight. That of course, he has gained certainly some clear recognition and lots of interest being played internationally over this this potential strain of relations between those two South American countries. And so he did an interview on the BBC's Hard Talk with Stephen Saka, and that has raised a very interesting matter regarding the issues of climate change and the issues of who has the right to pollute and who doesn't, and how then the responsibilities of each state measured against the other. Now, we know very well that the industrial age, as we understand it, started off in the United Kingdom. It's very well documented in terms of the rise of industrialization in the 1700s, the late 1700s, which certainly took root in the 1800s, where we saw a tremendous amount of innovation leading towards processes such as the mining of coal in particular, and that coal becoming a source of energy to drive steam engines, to drive factories, and eventually leading towards many other areas in terms of the rise of electricity, electric systems. But that was very, very early on, of course. And of course, the rise of rail leading to spreading around, and of course, being able to move goods and services around even more. And that whole process of that industrial revolution, which quite often they say started off in areas like Bolton in the Midlands of the United Kingdom, and which took root, was really the beginnings of our issues with significant climate change, anthropogenic climate change. And that process of industrialization led to tremendous wealth accumulation by countries like the United Kingdom, and later on many other countries in Europe, which went through that same process, including France and Germany and Italy in particular. And that, of course, also spreading to the United States, with significant industrialization occurring there on the same principles of coal extraction, and that coal driving the use of steam engines, and driving the factories, and driving steams for railways, and of course also later on shipping, and all of that resulted in the early advantages which these countries were able to enjoy. And that has led significantly to what we now see as the developed world, and of course the quality of life that those countries enjoy. And we can, of course, look at all of them, which is now 200 years later, manifesting itself into phenomenal wealth accumulation, phenomenal amounts of assets and systems which support this quality of life. And so the question then becomes, other countries now, which are not as well developed, should they not want or aspire to have that growth? Should they not be part of this very same opportunity? And we've seen, of course, when you look at the oil companies around the world, the vast majority of them, of course, were owned by interests out of Europe, as well as interests in the Americas. Whether you may be talking about BP and Shell, and of course, and many others who were very much in control of those oil resources from a very, very early point. And in very many instances, the oil resources in developing countries. And we've, of course, seen that story of how that has gone in places like Venezuela, which was a very early entrant into the whole petro system around the world. And of course, we've seen as well, in some places, there was a pushback and a nationalization of those resources in the Middle East, like in Saudi Arabia, for instance. And of course, we've also seen how oil has also determined even the creation of states. And we saw the creation of Kuwait and Iraq to split the oil resources that will found themselves in the Euphrates region. So certainly many countries, many of these developed countries have enjoyed the benefit of hundreds of years now of industrialization and hundreds of years of wealth accumulation. And of course, here comes Guyana, very late in the game, in not more than 2 years now, has been engaged in the business of oil. And mind you, they're dealing with international oil companies, which are in fact coming out of those very same countries like Chevron. And they still are major beneficiaries out of that entire process. But still under scrutiny for being able to enjoy that wealth. And so I just thought it would be interesting to share a little exchange between Stephen Saka of the BBC and Irfan Ali, president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, speaking about this matter of climate change and Guyana's responsibilities towards that.
Decades, it is expected that there will be $150 billion worth of oil and gas extracted off your coast. It's an extraordinary figure, but think of it in practical terms. That means, according to many experts, more than 2 billion tons of carbon emissions will come from your seabed, from those reserves, and be released into the atmosphere. I don't know if you as a head of state went to the COP in Dubai.
Let me stop you right there. Do you know that Guyana has a forest forever that is the size of England and Scotland combined? A forest that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon? A forest that we have kept alive? A forest that we have kept alive?
Does that give you the right? Does that give you the right to release all of this carbon?
Does that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I am going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon that you enjoy, that the world enjoy, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value, that you don't see a value in, that the people of Guyana has kept alive. Guess what? We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world. And guess what? Even with our greatest exploration of the oil and gas resource we have now, we will still be net zero. Guyana will still be net zero.
That exchange there coming from a program called Hard Talk on the BBC. And of course, speaking to the matter of what that oil represents. And of course, we know that the extraction of oil and the burning of those fossil fuels leads to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It leads to the greenhouse gas effect. It leads to the warming of the earth. This is something that we have known, science has known since Joseph Fourier figured it out sometime back in the 1830s. All right. So this is, of course, a lot more science has developed around it over the years, and we have come to a point where this is irrefutable, and we know that there's a very clear impact. But of course, the question of responsibility and who should be taking responsibility at this point in time to be able to protect the very same things that we say we want protected and we say we want addressed in terms of climate change. And that tends to be very, very painful because adjustments quite likely have to be made in so very many places around the world. And the point being made by Mr. Ali is a significant one regarding the matter of forest and forest cover. Interesting enough, just recently I was looking at a documentary in which it was speaking about the state of forest in Great Britain, right? And that island, I think only about 12% of the land is actually under forest. And even that compared to European standards is pretty low, where in fact in Europe I think it's closer to about 30%. In Great Britain it's even far less. And they were actually looking at a particular area in the United Kingdom right now, known as the Moors, this fairly extensive grassland area, which goes on for a very, very long distance up in a region called Farnham, and they were pointing out that this actually was not the natural environment of this place. This was an area where over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of years, the land was literally cleared and altered by human beings. Even perhaps one can say long before even the whole concept of England even existed. So this is human interaction shifting and changing the landscape in a tremendous way. But this whole process of deforestation is a very unfortunate one, because it takes a long time to reverse, and it takes it takes a very deliberate and consistent effort for conservation and protection to be able to achieve. We have had our own challenges right here in St. Lucia of deforestation. And a lot of it, of course, has been as a result, again, of agriculture over the years. And, of course, had it not been for the efforts of many foresters who went before us, in particular, of course, we can think of Gabriel Coco Charles and all the work that he did in forest conservation, and others even before him, to actually protect our forests, we would perhaps even be in a worse state than we are currently. So it is a major challenge to be taken on, but the whole idea, again, of as has been put by Mr. Ali, of lecturing these small states about this issue of climate change, when very often the issue really more so has lied within the states of the north, the states that are currently enjoying the benefits of investment for hundreds of years, and I was almost saying, hey, you know what, you can't really go this way now. And it's a big issue around the world. It's what dominates a lot of the debate in the COP meetings. It is a major issue between China, which is, of course, the world's most populous country of 1.4 billion people, and one of the fastest growing regions in the world in terms of just the sheer number of people that have come out of poverty and are now enjoying a middle-class life, and the extent of development that country is seeing. And they're saying, hey, you need to cut back. And then, of course, the response coming from China is that, hey, we're the largest producer of electric vehicles right about now. 30% of all our vehicles are electric. We're the largest producers of solar photovoltaics right about now. We're the largest producers of wind turbines right about now. We're using this stuff. We're trying our very best, all right, even though we're still a developing country, to be able to make that shift. All right, and that's what they're saying, and they're doing this. But what about you? Are you doing enough? Because you've enjoyed the wealth, you've enjoyed the benefits of this for a very long time. Our people are just beginning to enjoy these benefits, and it's going to mean that we are going to have to also expand. And so when you look at it on a proportional basis in terms of the population, you're using far more per capita than we are using. So at what point do we achieve parity? At what point is there going to be equity in who has the right to continue to emit greenhouse gases and who has the right to extract minerals for that purpose? And so there is a significant level of cooperation that has to happen around the world on this matter of energy and where it's going to be coming from and the technologies. And that's the other big problem too, that a lot of the technologies that are needed to be ramped up in the developing countries are still being held by developed world countries who effectively still want to leverage those innovations, and because they believe that, look, they're patents, they're and there's value, they've invested in this, and so therefore they want to be able to make a return on these technologies. But therein lies that big tussle in terms of it. Here, you have the technologies that we require, but you want us to make that significant change, not to go in the direction of doing it as we have done it in the past in terms of oil and gas. But then something has to give in this world when it comes to this matter of cooperation on climate change. Of course, the financing on climate change has been another major stumbling block, and how that financing is actually reaching the countries that need it the most to be able to make those changes. And you can look at many of these funds that have been created. The Green Climate Fund is a good example of that. And the complexity of the requirements that exist for small states to be able to access those funds makes it very challenging. And in very many instances, the quote-unquote, the pipeline to be able to get anything out of those funds is, you're talking in maybe in 4, 5, 6 years before you can get a project approved. So there has to be if we're talking about speeding up that change towards dealing with climate change, there's certainly a lot of work still to be done by the developed world when it comes to actual actions in terms of resources, in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of providing better access to funding in this regard, and perhaps a little bit less of the pontificating as well. Well, want to wish everybody a very blessed weekend, a very happy Easter in advance. We do hope that you enjoy it. Of course, it's a long weekend, and we do hope that everybody is going to be safe and exercise good caution on our roads in particular. We know everybody's out and about and trying to enjoy themselves, and we want to do so safely so that we can all ensure that we can meet up again on Tuesday, God willing. So do have yourself a very wonderful Easter. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.